Hey, good afternoon, guys. This is Charlie Pankey for Sierra Rec Magazine. Thank you for joining us again this week on our Sierra Rec Now podcast. We hope that the Sierra is within your sights or in your future plans here soon. And we are more than excited today to bring one of our guests today that everybody has that person they follow and mentor, right? And today I have Mike Mullen. He's owner and author of, let's see, Lakes of Yosemite, Lakes of Desolation. I'm not sure. Do you have any other job titles, Mike? But Mike is someone I go to when I need to go. Hey, where should I go? And Mike has always been courteous with me, and he's got a great project coming up. We're going to talk about today, called Lakes of Yosemite. So, Mike, how you doing today?
I'm great, Charlie. Yeah, thanks for having me here. It's fun to
Uh,
be here.
we're excited to have you. Our guests, a lot of our readers are actually from the Bay Area, from Fresno area, and they're all coming to the Sierra, maybe Los Angeles area.
Sure.
Maybe we could take a real quick moment, have you introduce yourself to everyone, and quickly introduce the project you're working on.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Mike Mullen. I currently live in San Francisco, but I had the great good fortune of growing up on the North Shore of Lake Tahoe. So the mountains are near and dear to my heart, the Sierra especially. Um, and about 10 years ago, I started working on a project to photograph all the named lakes in Desolation Wilderness. And that was so much fun. I didn't want to stop. So after that, I started working on the lakes of Yosemite. And this will be the 9th summer that I'm working on that project. And it's getting close to finish. So this
I
may be
say
the final summer.
nine summers, and you have 9 lakes left, correct? If I'm not
That's
mistaken.
correct. Yeah.
Oh
Good
yeah,
memory. Yeah.
that's pretty good. Yeah, the far out reaching lakes. We've been following Mike since Desolation. Obviously, you and I've been connected on social media for
Yeah.
years.
Many
It seems
years.
like, and
Yeah.
since I started Sierra Rec 10 years ago, probably.
Yeah.
And I know Lakes of Desolation. You and I've talked about quite a bit, and some of the challenges it was to just get to every place that has a name. But Yosemite, I know, is brought a whole different set of challenges. I thought, wonder if we start today a little bit on the challenging side. Of like, you take on this project to photograph every named lake. Now, there's
Yeah.
lots of other tarns and different things that don't have names, but uh, what are some of the biggest challenges you found in the last 7-10 years that you've been doing this in
Oh,
finding and
sure.
getting these lakes?
Yeah, yeah. Good question, Charlie. Yeah, there's well, there are a few challenges. Um, to the best of my knowledge, no one's ever done this before, so part of it is kind of figuring out how to do it. Then that started with creating that list. I created a list of 167 named lakes, but there's not really a definitive list available.
Mm-hmm.
The National Park Service claims there's about 2,000 lakes in Yosemite, which I believe, but I think some of those are probably like wide spots and rivers, and some are little seasonal ponds. And
Little elbows,
anyway,
right?
that seemed a little untenable, so I focused on the ones with names. Um, and of those 167, 100 are off trail or cross country, so there's no currently maintained and marked trail to them. So that creates an interesting challenge
Mm-hmm.
to find the route and navigate to those lakes, which is a lot of fun.
So,
Um,
is navigation something that it came naturally to you? Is that a skill you've had to learn
yeah, I was
in
really
hiking?
lucky. I grew up hiking cross country. Again, I grew up at Lake Tahoe, and my
Mm-hmm.
dad loved to fish, and he especially loved to fish in places where there were no other people.
Yeah.
And for him, that meant places where there was not a trail. So, and his dad was the same way, and so kind of taught him. So it felt natural to me to travel cross country off trail, especially in the Sierra, where if you're lucky, things are pretty open. There's not too much brush.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you found yourself in a pickle or two where you've walked, a mile, 2 miles into a certain direction just to find yourself turning back around?
Yeah, absolutely. Luckily, only once, pretty badly, near Ostrander Lake.
Okay.
I had that uniquely unsettling experience of figuring out that you're totally not where you thought you were, and you're headed. In my case, I was headed 180 degrees in the wrong direction, and
Wow,
uh,
that's a big
yeah, it's
difference.
very it's an unnerving experience.
Hope you didn't get too far.
Not too far. Yeah, I figured out that I was lost and took a nice break and just relaxed for a little bit, and then things started to look a little better, and I kind of was able to figure out where I'd gone wrong and get back on track. But
It's
kind of the
amazing.
fun cross country travel. Usually, you're not that far off track, but it's a lot of kind of tacking back and forth and kind of figuring out where you need to go. And
Is there a lake that sticks out in your mind as that was the toughest route I've ever had to endure to get the photo?
oh yeah, good question. There are some tough ones. Some of those last 9, there's some tough ones left. But one that was particularly elusive for me was Spiller Lake, which is kind of in the northeast of the park.
Okay.
Um, and it took 4 tries to get there, and I
Wow.
finally reached it from probably not the best way, which
Okay.
involved an extremely steep descent from the north down to the lake. That was it was a little hairy, such that I spent the night there, and the next morning I looked back at my route in, and I decided I don't think I want to go up the way I came down, so I went back a different way, which is unusual because usually up is easier than down when
Right.
you're climbing something steep. So
Yeah, was that route like it was just pure the steep and like drop offs, or did you have a lot of talus that was sliding and stuff? I know those.
oh yeah,
Okay.
it was legitimate. That was the sketchiest little section. It's been like 90 days in the field, 89, something like that.
Hmm.
That was definitely the sketchiest. Like hour took an hour to go like 2/10 of a mile and 600 vertical feet down.
Crazy,
Yeah,
crazy. I know I followed some of your. I think it was even last summer. You actually is. I mean, the project's got to be difficult because you can't just drive your car in Tuolumne Meadows and just hike to all these lakes in a day, right? So, like
yeah,
last year, I think you were going through Hoover Wilderness from 108. You
right.
came down into through the Hoover Wilderness into Yosemite on the backside to
Yeah,
get some of these lakes, right? So there's some distance you have to cover just to get into certain areas.
yeah. It's been one of the fun, unexpected pleasures of the project. Really, is getting exposure to specifically the Hoover Wilderness. Um, that Spiller Lake, all 4 of those attempts started on the Hoover Wilderness, going
Oh,
in
okay,
through Summit Lake on every try.
okay, all right,
Um, so yeah, and then you've got the Immigrant Wilderness to the north, and the
mm-hmm.
Ansel Adams to the south and the east. So yeah, it's a fun thing about Yosemite. It's in itself surrounded by wilderness area on 3
Yeah,
sides. So
exactly.
it really expands the. I mean, in a lot of ways, it kind of expands the park.
Yeah. Where it is did you start with just a map and start, pinpointing all these places before when you planned it out? Or like today, I've been doing Yosemite hikes now for 7 years, and
Cool.
I literally read a path that somebody took. I go, I've never even thought that would be a route. And it
Yeah.
was a whole different concept of getting into Yosemite, kind of like a southwestern side, and did a big loop into Vogelsang. I was like, that's
Oh,
crazy. I
cool.
didn't even know you
Yeah.
could do that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I mean, uh, I I sympathize with you. I'm constantly learning new things. There's these trips, these last trips I'm planning for this summer that I've been thinking about for a long time, and I still kind of just study the maps on. I use Caltopo a lot. It's a great
okay.
base tool that I really like, caltopo.com. And yeah, still new stuff jumps out at me on the topo map. Like, oh, what about that little wrinkle, or maybe this approach is better. And it's a fun. It occupies a lot of my time in the winter
Right.
looking at
Do
topo
you
map.
have a background in like rock climbing or anything like that? Do you have to have
Mm.
technical skills, or do you just keep it, pretty much a standard backpacker, maybe a little class three,
Yeah, no, I
climber?
don't have any rock climbing background. I never carry rope.
Okay.
I try to keep it class 2 at the
Okay,
most.
class two. Okay.
Yeah, there might be the occasional little bit of class 3, but it's not my. And it's part of the lake focus. I don't have to climb peaks. So
Exactly. Yeah, that is really actually part of my. I think it's why you and I connect. I do lakes and valleys and rivers, and I hardly ever go to the peaks. So
yeah,
obviously our pictures are, something we look at all the time. But if you
yeah,
don't know Mike and follow my story here at Sierra Magazine, I've done a half a dozen backpacking trips now in Yosemite. Mike is,
cool.
you wouldn't
Yeah,
know, is actually giving me leads on every one of those. Go, hey, you should check this lake out or stay there. I think the first time I spoke to you, I was doing Young's Lake, and you
yeah. I
made a
remember.
recommendation on that. And then the next year, you gave me probably my best advice I've ever received, and that was going to the Nelson Lake Loop, where we did Nelson,
Yeah,
Maces, Echo around the cathedral. And you were kind of the
cool.
one that said, hey, if you're looking for something fun off trail, that would be a great one
Yeah.
for my family. I've done that twice now with two different
Oh,
groups of
cool.
people. It's
All
just
right,
been,
great.
it's absolutely one of my favorite, beautiful off trail experiences because you just don't see anybody, right? It's like
Yeah,
I saw
it's
3 people last time the whole
oh,
weekend,
cool. Yeah,
except for 4 days.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, first, I gotta say, like, you take some great photographs of those places. It's been
I
fun to
appreciate
see,
that.
especially your shots of young lakes, and
Yeah.
that's a special spot. Um, but yeah, it's been one of the fun things that I've learned, or the kind of uh, trend that's emerged
Hmm.
around Yosemite is, I think, so many folks who go to Yosemite, they want to hike one of the marquee trails,
Yep.
and it creates this weird vacuum for all the rest of the park. There's just not that many people. I think local, Californians are thinking like, oh, it's too crowded. I don't want to bother the permits, whatever, yada yada.
Hmm.
So they don't go. So you're left with people who are maybe going to be in the park one or two times in their life. So they want to do the thing, the big thing,
Yep.
Half Dome, Clouds Rest,
Yep.
um, etc. John Muir Trail. So if you get off of those routes, like I routinely spend days and don't see anybody,
Yeah.
and it's been a real surprise. I had kind of thought I had really prepared myself to have a much more crowded, less solitude kind of experience in Yosemite, but it hasn't proved to be the case, and luckily. And yeah,
That's great.
Nelson,
Yeah.
great example. That's a little
Yeah.
gem.
Nelson Lake. I both times I've been there now. I've seen one person.
Yeah,
They stay on the other side of the lake. I had my side of the lake, and
right.
then I didn't see anybody at Mathis this year at all. And we
Cool.
just had the
Yeah,
whole place to ourselves, which is amazing. And
yeah.
then we got to Echo Lake, and one person walked through but didn't stay, so we had Echo Lake, the whole canyon to
Oh,
ourselves
cool.
all night long.
Yeah,
Now we got the cathedral. Obviously, there's the crowd again, right?
right. There's
But it
yeah,
was like I just
the
had three, 2 nights basically with I saw two human beings in the
yeah,
distance.
yeah,
Pretty
yeah.
awesome. So
Yeah, it's special. I'm routinely amazed at how you can, in the state of California, you can hike out not too far and be completely by
not far at
yourself
all.
for
Not
several
really far
days.
at all, really, right?
Yeah.
So I have a question. You mentioned a minute ago permits, and so it's one of the
Sure.
questions I've always wanted to ask you yourself. Like you're going some places that you really can't find on a permit map, right? You can't log into recreation.gov and say, "Hey, I want this trail permit because I'm going to this lake." It's not listed, right? So
Right.
how does someone who wants to go explore a lake that's off one of the main reservation routes, how do they go about getting a permit to a lake like that?
Sure. Yeah, it's a good question, Charlie. And I think that the permit during, our kind of 10 years of experience in that area,
Hmm.
the permit process has really improved, in my opinion. And just this year, I discovered a nice like zone map of all of so, when you're on recreation.gov,
Yep.
um, and you're selecting from that drop down where you want to spend your nights,
Hmm.
there's a nice map now that defines those terms. So a lot of those,
Oh,
like when those drop downs
yeah.
can be a little vague sounding.
Exactly. I
Um,
need you to send me that because the Desolation there's a zone map. Well, I use
yeah,
that all the time,
exactly.
right?
Yeah,
So that
desolation.
makes a lot of sense.
You have that first night requirement that you have
Yep.
to spend your first night in your quota zone. Um, so yeah, that tool is really useful. I'll send it to you, Charlie.
Okay.
I don't know if there's like show notes, you can put it in there.
Yeah, I don't have
But
it here today, but
yeah,
fairly
it's
new still to the streaming thing. So
sure. Yeah, yeah, me too. Um, it's also linked through the recreation.gov page for
okay,
Yosemite permits, but it was new to me. So
perfect.
that helps. I think when there's a couple of nice like tips, I guess, for Yosemite permits. Like if you're not doing one of those top 5 trailheads, like permits are pretty easy to get.
Yeah.
Either reserve them, in advance. It's like not quite 6 months where they open up a
Yep.
batch of permits, and then the next batch is opened up 2 weeks ahead. And then you can also enter, through one of those surrounding wilderness areas, and then you just need the permit for whatever that wilderness area is. And some of those are all unfortunately different the way they're
Hmm.
managed.
Yeah. So for like Hoover Wilderness last year, you got a permit from Hoover Wilderness, and it
Yeah,
spilled
exactly.
into Yosemite
Right.
over. But did you have to have a Yosemite permit to be in Yosemite, or did you just take the Hoover Wilderness
Yeah,
and
no,
go straight?
the like it's all based on where you start your hike.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
in that case, I started from Robinson Creek at Twin Lakes outside
Hmm.
Bridgeport,
Yep.
and that permit was good all through for a week, in Yosemite, although I spent one no, well, I camped right on the border, but the
Gotcha.
first night and the last night, it's
Yep.
kind of academic whether I was in Yosemite or the Hoover Wilderness those 2 nights.
There's no
But I
lines in
did,
the wilderness, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly. There was no marker right where I
Yeah.
camped. So I was pretty close though. Um, and I did get stopped by a ranger in Yosemite who had no problem with my permit.
Oh, good. Okay.
So yeah, so I know I have both book knowledge and live knowledge that that works.
That's perfect. That's kind of what I was wondering, because I've never actually done that myself.
Oh
Like
yeah, sure.
to get into Yosemite from an outside wilderness, I've always just driven
Yeah, yeah,
into
yeah, of
the
course,
to
yeah.
into.
The
And what you
the
said about permits is so true. Like I've never the only permit I've ever been denied in Yosemite,
uh,
and I get one every year because I always put three options, so it doesn't matter which
oh,
one I
yeah,
get, right?
cool.
But I wanted for the longest time to either start at Sunset Lakes or start at Cathedral Lakes. And then instead of going up to Cathedral Lakes, I actually want to go to Lyell Canyon and over Donahue and down to Devil's Postpile through Anthony
Oh,
Mountains,
sure.
right? And so, but Donahue Pass is one of those things. It's really hard to get that permit. It's like a lottery system to go over that,
Yeah.
right? And that's the only permit I've never. I mean, I've been. I mean, there's been times I said I'm gonna only do that one. Nope, turned down. It's the only thing I get turned down for
Yeah.
everything else I get. Right? It's like, all right, well, there. I always thought, oh, I'll try it on Wednesday. Then Wednesday's got to be a better day to go in, right? No, the
Right.
Donahue's hard.
Yeah, yeah, that's a tough one. Yeah, I've never even tried to get I mean, I've gotten a couple of Lyell Canyon permits,
Yeah,
but not with not through Donahue.
yeah,
So,
yeah. I've
it's
been
that
told to go over Coip, to just go up over Coip and forget Lyell. If you've already hiked Lyell, just go up Coip and go over.
yeah,
It's a little
yeah,
higher elevation, but you can get that one a
yeah.
little easier. I understand. So,
Yeah,
but yeah,
if you're willing to kind of, get away from the main most popular routes, there's lots of options,
lots of
alternative.
options. Has there been a route that's like still on your, maybe it's one of the nine that are still on the list that you've been trying to get done, but you were denied a permit, or you just haven't been able to get that one secure yet, or
Sure, yeah, well, there's, one of the, trips I've got planned this summer, I wasn't able to get the trailhead permit I wanted, so I'm just starting from a different trailhead, and in
gotcha.
fact, it's kind of relevant to what you're bringing up right now because I had wanted to have sunrise, permit, but I'm gonna hike out, via Nelson instead. I have a trip
Okay,
to the Clark Range, essentially.
that's gonna be
Uh,
a beautiful
Gonna
hike.
access it just a little differently.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's it. That would be when we got to Echo last year. We wished we had an extra day because my son would wanted to see a sunrise. Oh, we could easily get sunrise from here,
Yeah.
and we could have done backtracked in that way, right? But we
Yeah.
didn't have an extra day last year, so it was like,
Yeah.
we'll come back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, one of the
Yeah.
trips the, I'd say one of the trips I got planned this year. I told you about is like I'm going up Rafferty Creek to Vogelsang over to Bernice Lake, and then
Oh,
from Bernice
right.
I think I'm gonna do
Cool.
Washburn. And then
Okay,
down in
yeah.
the valley, I have a cousin coming out that wants to do that trip. And
Oh,
the gal
cool.
I watched
Yep.
today, I was doing this trip. She actually landed at Bernice Lake, but instead of going straight down to Washburn, she actually climbs back up Vogelsang, goes Emmerich, um,
Oh, yeah.
that next lake past Emmerich. I forget what the name of that one past Emmerich is, but then goes back
Yeah,
down, then goes to
Babcock.
Washburn and
Yeah.
goes out. So
Yeah.
what's that lake?
Babcock Lake is the one below,
Babcock. That's what it
Emmerich.
is.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And yeah, if you get the opportunity, it's a beautiful little lake. It's kinda out of the way. Lots of good camping sites there. I didn't camp there, but,
Right.
it looked I wished I could. It looked like a great spot to spend a night.
It That's a great
Just
question for you. Is there, now that you're down to your last nine, are you gonna be able to finish those this year? You think, or is it going to be one more year?
Yeah, I think there's a pretty good chance.
Okay,
We'll see.
close, huh? Well, as weather and fire holds up.
Yeah, a lot of variables, but
Yeah.
it feels reachable. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
Is there a lake in your memory bank where you go, when this is all done, I can't wait to go back and spend 3 or 4 days there and just fish and hang out, and
Sure.
is
Yeah.
there kind of a place, one of those Nirvana places?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, a couple things. One, I don't fish, so I
Oh,
wouldn't be
okay.
doing that. But two, yeah, I mean, like half of them at least, maybe
Okay.
more. I mean, so many of them are amazing. Yeah, I don't think there's like a single one that jumps out, but there's lots that I would
There's
love to
lots
come
of
back
beautiful
to.
lakes up there, right?
Yeah, Maclure Lake was a really special spot, and a fun hike. That would be a fun one to do again. Uh,
What side of is McClure on? I've seen
sure,
that name, but
Yeah, Maclure Lake is the highest elevation named lake in the park. It's just
Oh,
under
wow.
11,500, and it's just below Maclure, Mount Maclure and
Oh,
Mount Lyell. So the
that makes
big
sense.
glaciers are up there above it. And it's just way above tree line, all just rocky,
Beautiful.
kind of austere, and it drains out to the north, and it just has that little bit of kind of infinity pool quality to it a little bit, where you can
Oh,
look out
nice.
across the lake and just you're so high, you don't there's very little out there. And it's yeah, it's a special spot and just a fun. That was one of most of the hikes I've gone on. I go by myself,
Right.
but this trip, my brother was able to join me, and we hiked in via Ireland Lake,
Yep.
which was really fun. And the cross country route from Ireland to Maclure was wonderful. And so that's a cool little zone.
That's cool.
That'd be a fun one to go back
It's
to.
pretty
But
rugged up there.
a lot of them.
That's a pretty rugged part of the country. When you get up
Yeah,
there
I
like
would.
that.
It kind of yeah, it is. But that cross country route is really mellow,
Okay.
and it's just nice. I mean, the scenery is astounding.
Nice.
And it's a walk in it's just this mellow walk in the park
Yeah.
up there.
My
Cool.
sons, I took them backpacking up Rafferty, Bogleston
Ah,
area, and then we crossed over to Ireland, and then
oh,
down
cool.
into Lisle and out. We did that
Yeah.
loop, so it's like
Yeah,
a
that's a
10-mile
great
loop, right?
move. Yeah.
But we stayed our final night up on the ridge line, kind of north of Ireland Lake, just kind
Okay.
of right up on the ridge line. Found like a rock shelf and a little
Yeah.
grassy area, and you had the perfect view of sunset on the Kuna Crest
Oh, cool. Yeah.
across the canyon and stuff. It was
Yeah.
such a beautiful. And they said we had no water. We forgot to fill up water in our
Uh,
last stop, so we were kind of a little short on water. But it was one of those nights where you sat back and played cards in the grass. It's one of my
nice.
favorite nights out in the woods. It's pretty cool. So
Yeah,
uh,
that Ireland Lake is pretty spectacular.
it's a
That's
neat
a
neat
cool
neat
spot.
region. Yeah.
Yeah.
But in all your travels, Desolation, Yosemite, whichever it is, have you besides the time you get lost, do you ever run into angry mountain lion or bear or anything like that that scared you, or any stories like that?
Yeah, no, luckily, knock on wood, it's been pretty smooth sailing for the most part. I think partially it's because I hike by myself. I'm pretty cautious and I don't take a
Hmm.
lot of chances. So yeah, I think the most like harrowing experience I had was getting caught out in a snowstorm,
Oh, really?
um, and with a pretty limited. I had uh, just brought a small tarp, no tent, because I was anticipating better weather. So I made a little lean-to makeshift place to camp.
Okay.
That was a little bit more adventure than I had bargained on, but it turned out to be a beautiful experience. It was fun to see the fresh snow, and yeah,
Was it like a late season or was it an early spring one that you were going
it was
in?
a little late. It was like
Okay.
early October, first week in October.
Oh,
So,
all right.
definitely possible to get some snow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
Especially in
yeah,
Yosemite,
yeah,
that in the ranges there.
yeah.
And you said that earlier that you'd gone through immigrant wilderness also.
Uh,
Is there a zone? If you kind of, I always take Yosemite, I kind of quadrant into four zones, right? You got the northwest, east.
yeah.
Is there a zone of Yosemite that you found to be kind of your favorite to trounce around in? It's like I love going back here. It's like whether it be routes or canyons or more granite.
Oh, yeah. Charlie, good question. It's really hard for me to pick favorites.
Okay,
It's all pretty wonderful.
that's fair. My wife hates when I ask the favorite questions too. She goes, "Stop doing that. They're all good."
Yeah, truly. I mean, I think one zone of the park that stood out to me just because I didn't expect it, I
Yeah.
guess, was what would be the northwest, out above Cherry Lake and
Hmm.
Lake Eleanor, that little corner,
Okay.
mm, and Boundary Lake and Inferno Lakes there, and then a little further to the east, you'd get to the Twin Lakes and the
Hmm.
Peninsula Lakes, and that whole area. I just wasn't really expecting those lower. They're all those lakes. Most of them are kind of lower elevation,
Okay.
6,500 to 7,500, some of them
Hmm.
maybe pushing 8. Um, and it's kind of it looks on topo maps like a pretty mellow part of the park, but there's lots of stuff that falls under the 40-foot contour line, a 10-foot cliff
Gotcha.
is enough to turn you around, me
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that kind of business in that area, and brush. So it's kind of a fun, surprisingly difficult little corner of the park to negotiate.
Okay.
But cool little lakes, and a lot of it's off trail.
Yeah. I don't hear about that corner very often. I've never personally been
Yeah,
on that corner
yeah,
myself.
it's
Um,
out of the way. You have to drive. It's kind of a long drive out to Cherry Lake, and then
mhm.
for like 5 years, the main trailhead was kind of washed out, so you had to hike another mile. I think they may have fixed that by now.
Yeah.
It's a fun. It's the Kibbe Ridge, and Kibbe Lake is sort of the entry
Yep.
point.
Yeah, I know where you're at. I just, like I said, I hadn't done it myself because a
Yeah.
little bit because of the drive, right? Because I'm on the east side, so it's a kind of
Oh, right.
convenient
For
to
you,
go
it's a
that
lot
side
further.
and
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
For
make
me,
that
I,
trip.
I
So
live in San Francisco, so for me, it's a little easier.
that makes sense. Yeah, and I mean, this is why I go up Tioga Pass. As soon as my
Sure.
backyard
Yeah.
season starts, as
Totally.
soon as
Yeah,
it
you're right
opens up,
there.
so
Yeah.
that makes a whole lot of sense. So that you got stuck in snow. We're gonna run up on 30 minutes way too fast here. So I apologize to my fans if I run a little late here today. I was geeked a little bit about talking to Mike today. Um, I guess Mike, is there? It's what lake this year that you have coming up that you're kind of most anticipating? I don't know if you're nervous about these things anymore, but it's like that one's going to be particularly challenging, but it's going to be so much fun to get that lake.
Oh, sure. Yeah, great question. So I think there's two that kind of pop to mind. One that I'm more worried about, and one that I'm more excited about. So
Okay.
the one I'm a little worried about is called Edith Lake, and it's in that same area outside of Cherry Lake.
Yep.
That'll be my access point for this attempt. I've tried a few times from other
Okay.
directions to reach there. And it's an interesting lake. It's fairly low elevation. It's quite large. I think it's like 6,300. It's pretty low for Yosemite. But it's it's one of the ones that's furthest away from a trail. So
Yep.
it's going to require a lot of cross country, and it's down in this canyon that is, yeah. I mean, it's going to be a little tricky. So we'll
Yeah.
see.
Should be
It's
interesting.
eluded me. It's been when it kind of was when I started working on this project, going back to the beginning of our conversation. I did look at maps to get started and kind of like compile a list just by kind of scanning across the topo maps and writing down all the names. That was sort of my first step. And it jumped out at me that at the very beginning of this project, this Edith Lake, just looks super intriguing on the map.
Right.
So I think that's the one I'm a little apprehensive about because it's a
It's out
tough
there.
one. Despite being low elevation. Well, I mean that partially that brings in a lot of brush typically,
Yeah.
the lower elevation. So that's part of the challenge with that one. And then the one that I'm excited about is Harriet Lake, which
Mm.
is very high elevation. Have you been to
I
Harriet
have
Lake?
not been. I know where it's on the map, but I've not been
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
No. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So it's kind of the other side of the park,
Yep.
close to the Ansel Adams Wilderness, right on the boundary, essentially to the south, and cross country, but it looks pretty doable. It's kind of a long. It's going to be at the end of a long loop that I'm planning on doing. So,
Oh, fantastic.
and I think depending on how things work out, it's looking like that may well be the last lake that I get to for the first
Okay.
time. So I'm kind of, and it feels like a nice one to potentially close the project out with. So I'm
Okay.
excited about that.
Well, let's
Yeah.
talk about the close of the project real quick here.
Sure.
Last time for the Desolation, you did a little book. I know that
Yeah.
I have a copy of
Yeah.
that.
You've got a
Uh,
copy. Yeah.
yeah, are you planning to do the Lakes of Desolation book? Is it going to be something that people can look at for maybe not this Christmas, maybe that's too soon, but
Yeah.
the next Christmas or next next hiking season?
Yeah. It's not going to be this year. I do
Yep.
want to make a book. Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, it'll probably take a few years
Okay.
to get together, but it's definitely going to happen because that was a really fun part of the Desolation project,
Right.
doing that. So yeah.
Yeah, it was really good. It's really good. I got one for my friend as well. So and
Oh, cool.
we were just talking about it actually the other day because I'm a volunteer in Desolation. I think you know that. And so
Oh, well, no, I didn't know that.
they asked
That's
me to
really
kind
great.
of adopt Snow Lake this year, and so I'm
Oh,
gonna be
cool.
doing 4 trips into Snow Lake and doing some
Cool.
extra mapping and stuff for people this year on that one too. So
Yeah. Oh,
I'm getting
very
some people
cool.
lost out there. But
Yeah.
I Ropey Lake and Snow and Azure. Those are the 3 lakes I enjoy the most, and those are the
Yeah,
three that are the
those are good
hardest to get into
ones.
a little bit maybe sometimes. But
Yeah. Oh man, Snow Lake, that's a place I'd love to get back to. And
yep.
Azure. Those are
I
really.
saw the biggest bear last year going in Snow Lake. It was
Oh, really?
massive. I came up off a piece of granite and turned kind of south into these bushes, and he just stood up,
Oh,
7.5 feet tall,
oh no.
big. I mean, Matt paws as big as my fit. I like took my way. Whoa, you're a big boy, and I stepped backwards, and he just plopped down and ran away. But it was like that was the biggest bear I'd ever seen.
Yeah, that sounds a little too close for comfort.
Yeah, it was 30 yards, but it was like, whoa, yeah,
Probably
he,
felt a lot less than 30 yards.
it made me stumble. It was like, okay, back up. But I was
Yeah.
just glad he ran the other direction because
Yeah, yeah,
so
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I really do think they're, unless they're habituated to people, the wild ones are way more scared of us than we are of them. Not
absolutely.
from our
The mama bear and the cub I'd seen the year before down in Snow Creek area. Mama didn't. She just ran across the trail and started eating grubs 50 yards of trail. It was the cub I was worried about because he stood up on his hind legs and looked at me going, "Hey, what are you?"
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So you stay over there.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. You don't want
Very
to get
cool.
involved in that.
Very good. Mike, we run on 30 minutes. I want to be
Sure.
respectful
Yeah.
of his time. You and I, maybe I'll have you on again in the summer and we'll talk about your 9 lakes here.
Cool.
I asked my guests 3 questions to end our interview each time.
Sure,
So
Charlie.
the
Yeah.
same 3 questions, kind of fun ones and I think these will be good for you.
Great.
So I know your bag's packed for the summer already. So this would probably maybe be a little, but let's just say the bag's packed and you're going to go someplace that you just love to go, or you
Sure.
just can't wait to go for the first time. Where are you heading?
Oh, yeah. Well, good question. Well, I mean, the trip that's really on my mind is that trip to Edith Lake. So,
Edith
and that's
Lake.
going to go in via Flora Lake. So Flora
Oh,
and Edith Lake.
oh, very good.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look that
They're
up. I'm
across
gonna
the
see what your
stream.
route is. That's gonna be. I know where that lake's on the map is. I've looked at it too, and I'm going. That's gonna be fun to see what you do on that one. Very cool. And so while you're on the trail, actually this could be a two-part. Like on the
Okay.
trail, like favorite snack you take with you that you always eat, and then like you hike some massive miles. So like, what's the after post hike go-to meal? That gravy cheeseburger milkshake, right? Just like
Right, great questions. I would appreciate. I don't have a favorite snack. I really
okay.
struggle with that. So, what's your favorite snack? 'Cause I
You
need some
know,
tips.
I have two really. My cheat snack is just those little mini payday bars. It's peanuts
Oh,
and
yeah,
caramel, which is a
nice.
great trail, snack food.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
then just while I'm on the trail, like I'm just hiking through the day, I just like sunflower seeds.
Oh, okay.
The little
Nice.
salt
Little
and
salt.
sunflower
Yeah.
seeds, does a good trick for me. So
All right.
I'm pretty
Nice.
simple that way.
Yeah. I'll have to keep the. Yeah.
But after trail, cheeseburger, milkshake, wherever I'm at,
All
just
right.
find the nearest cheeseburgers.
Yeah. That sounds good. Yeah. No, I don't have a good after trail
You don't
tradition.
either, huh?
Yeah, I need
But
to develop that. Yeah.
between Yosemite and San Francisco, there's got to be some good places to stop and
There's
grab
gotta
a
be.
meal.
Yeah, it's funny, I'm always kind of in a rush to get home when I'm done, so
Sure.
I rarely stop. I usually just head home and then, yeah, cook something at home. I don't have a good I that would be nice to have a nice
To figure
post-trip.
that, right?
Yeah, I gotta work on
Very
that.
good, very good. And my final question, I guess, is favorite piece of gear that you have in your bag. Like, what is the I never leave home without this piece of gear?
Oh, sure, yeah, good question. I'm not too gear or I mean, like, gear isn't kind of the focus of my, like,
Yeah,
time, but
but your
one
camera is
thing.
obviously one, right?
Yeah, camera for sure. I do, I've definitely trended towards lighter weight gear over the years. So I have a nice setup now. One thing I got last year, which I kind of tried to resist for a while, but I really love, is a hyperlight mountain pack. I got
Okay.
a quarter pack that they make, and I had been a little skeptical of the of that brand for some
Yeah.
reason. But I got that pack and I got a couple of their packing pods, I think they call them, these little
Sure.
bags and stuff
Yep.
everything and
Yep.
they just fit perfect. And I have been amazed at how comfortable that pack is. It's like the simplest thing, no bells and whistles,
Yep.
uh, but it's by far the most comfortable pack I've ever carried.
That's
Uh,
great.
and that I love. I love that it's
Yeah.
comfortable. Yeah.
It's funny. I grabbed Eagle Creek Pod just this last March, and I'm
Oh,
looking forward to trying it because
cool.
just a different way of packing the pack, right? And
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
switched packs 2 years ago, and it doesn't have a bottom zip out like my old one did.
Okay.
It's like So I'm trying to
Sure.
figure out how to pack it differently. And so I bought some
Yeah.
pods, try to
Yeah.
compress that down a little differently. So
Let me know how you like them.
we'll do.
It's been a game changer for me. It's nice. You just pull, you pull like 4 things out of your pack, and then you can kind of like go from there instead of every little thing.
Yeah,
So,
that's what I was kind of thinking too.
and stuff stays drier. The pack itself is pretty waterproof, but then those things are as well. So when you stack those on top of each other, nothing gets wet, which is
Sure.
nice.
I'm sitting here
Yeah.
thinking of the 32 more questions I want to ask you. Like, do you take an in-reach advice? What's the nastiest river you get across? Yeah, I have all these questions I want to ask about hiking, but I want to be respectful of your time and our guest. We
Sure,
have gone
Charlie. Yep.
5 minutes over. So, Mike, thank you so much for joining me. Please, I'd love to tell more of your story as this gets going at the end of the year, or if you
Thanks,
want to write
Charlie.
another
Yeah,
story and tell another lake story, you're always welcome to write for me and for the magazine that
appreciate
way.
that.
But guys, check him out. Lakesofyosemite.com is to kind of track his thing. There's a map up there with what the little red dots of
Right.
what
Yeah.
lakes are left. You can see where he's been, and you see Mike on the trail and bushing through, the off trails. Just wave to him and say hi.
Yeah, please do. And anybody's got any questions, reach out anytime. I always love to chat about the mountains, answer questions about where I've been. So
Yeah, you're really active on Instagram. You always answer all my questions on Instagram.
yeah, happy
Lakes of
to.
Yosemite, great,
Yeah.
great photos, and you're
Uh,
always more than helpful with advice. So, thank you
yeah,
so much for your time today. I know it's Friday. Enjoy your weekend.
sure,
This
Charlie. Yeah,
and we'll look forward to getting this out to our crew and go from there.
cool. Yeah, thanks, Charlie. Really appreciate your time and really fun to be on. Fun conversation. Thanks so much.
Absolutely, Mike. Have a great
Yeah.
day.
All right. Take care.